I think after writing Loki and now working on Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, I've realized what I love about these projects is their gigantic scope. It's big, great blockbuster science fiction, which I have a background in from working on Rick and Morty, and I have a little bit of a shorthand in. But like Stan Lee's great original Marvel comics, ultimately they're stories about the humanity of these superheroes and supervillains. And so I find that I really get to tell dramatic stories against the backdrop of some crazy, fun stuff. And so I guess I hope that's what's made me a good fit. Well, Sam Raimi and I sat down together in February 2020. We both came on at the same time when we were taking over for from the previous writing and directing team, and we at the time were trying to hit a kind of imminent production deadline, and there was an initial race to quickly rewrite a version of a script that we had, which seemed impossible. And then halfway through the 3-week process of doing that, the COVID pandemic began, and our production pushed several months into the end of 2020. And so then Sam and I had an opportunity to look at each other and say, okay, what do we want this movie to be? If we had a chance to start over from scratch. And so he and I developed a vision for what our version of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness could be. And we brought that to Kevin, and he was really excited. And Sam and I worked together in lockstep over the rest of 2020, bringing that to life. It's any big science fiction concept is always tricky because you have to assume that your audience might not know anything about it. Fortunately, the multiverse as a concept has been out there in the world more and more over the last several years. So I think there's a general knowledge of it, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't excluding any of our audience who didn't know anything about the multiverse, and maybe you didn't know anything about Doctor Strange or Wanda, and so we tried to introduce as many points of view as possible in our movie that could represent the eyes of an audience who might not know anything about this crap, and had to learn about it along with our characters. And so, yeah, you're spinning a couple plates at once, but as long as you're keeping the humanity of your characters at the forefront, then even if they get lost in all the sci-fi mumbo-jumbo, they're still probably going to have a good time. I was really excited to get to introduce the character of America Chavez to the MCU. She's a fierce, brash character in the comics who is much older than the version of the character that we ultimately rendered and introduced in this movie. And so it really became for us in telling the story of a 14-year-old America Chavez. This was her origin story. And you're seeing in a lot of ways how is this character gonna become the America that maybe people who are fans of the comics know and love. She's still figuring out what her powers are, how to use them, reckoning with the trauma that she's endured because of them. And so we worked hard on that and worked with Xochitl Gomez, the tremendous young actor who plays America, to build that character together. Working with Sam was a dream come true. He's an absolutely delightful guy and such a generous collaborator. just a master at hearing ideas and synthesizing the best of everybody's input. And he's really unflappable. His endurance is inspiring. And when things were tough, you could always look to Sam, who would smile and crack a joke and make you feel like everything was going to be okay. And that's what you want out of your leader. And he was a real example in that way. And so it was, working with Sam was highlight of my career. I love the MCU movies because I think that they're wonderful blends of drama, first and foremost, but humor and heart against the backdrop of great sci-fi action. And I think that's why they have such broad appeal. And so when you're coming in to write an MCU film, you want to make sure that you're doing justice to that. And so part of it is, what the tone of an MCU movie is when you write it, and that in a lot of ways you're kind of writing an action comedy with a lot of heart. In this movie, we were going to be introducing some real horror elements for the first time to the MCU, and really trying to make what was in a lot of ways a suspense thriller. And that was exciting to me. And I think that the best horror movies, the best thrillers, are those scary moments are broken up by great moments, great laughs, great moments of levity that then you got the rug pulled out from under you and suddenly you're scared again. It's just a fun way to keep the audience off balance. When you're telling a story that features alternate versions of many well-known characters, it's important to not just do the kids show cartoon version of the multiverse, which is to say, if I meet a variant of myself from another universe, they're just the opposite of me. Everything they do is the opposite. Their life is the opposite. In building the alternate universes that we visit in this movie, I realized that for them to feel authentic, they really had to be lived in real places with their own histories and their own populations of characters, their own essential MCUs that have been going on that we just haven't seen. And that extended to the characters as well. These are, they're not caricatures. They're real alternate versions of our characters who have real lives, and our characters are colliding with them in the middle of those lives, much the way that you saw Tobey's Spider-Man and Andrew's Spider-Man collide with Tom Holland's Spider-Man in No Way Home. And so it's just about investing in the multiverse and in variance as a real human concept and taking it really seriously. I think when audiences see this film, they're going to see a thrilling continuation of the story of Stephen Strange that explores the cost of all the decisions he's made in his time as a sorcerer, and that also continues the journey of Wanda Maximoff as she reckons with her new power as the Scarlet Witch. And the two of them, along with a bunch of other great characters, some old, some new, going on a really fun multiversal adventure. If I could describe this film in one word, I think the word I would describe would be a ride. That was my approach as I was writing it while locked down in 2020 with my head spinning. I just thought about movies like Jurassic Park and like Aliens and like Terminator 2 that just felt like movies where you sat down, the harness came over you, and you were off. And so I think that's what we did. I hope it is, and I hope that's how it feels for the audience.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
That's our cut, you guys. Thanks.